response. So we want to make sure that they are protected, their families are protected, so that we can also then protect the country at large. Now, initially, a decision was taken that health workers who are working in facilities where they are exposed to possible infection from coronavirus, they should be separated and kept in facilities where they go to. When they go from, they come from this facility, come to work and go back to the particular facility, so that they don't then go to their families and possibly infect them. That is the background. That is the reason why the decision was taken for health workers who are working in facilities where there's possible exposure for COVID-19 infection would be kept in quarantine facilities. And we have been doing that since the beginning of the pandemic. Now, as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic is evolving. We are learning more and more about the pandemic, how it is spread, under which circumstances it is spread. Therefore, we need also to adjust our response. For that reason, the ministry commissioned a group of experts to come up with a document that would indicate a strategy for risk categorization and risk stratification for health workers in various settings. The first version of that document was communicated to the health workers in the ministry around July. It was circular number 53 that came out of my office, indicating a flow chart to say if a health worker is working in this type of setting, if this is the level of exposure, should this particular health worker be quarantined, or should this health worker, or is it safe for this health worker to be commuting to work from home? So what we are saying is we are adopting a responsible and a scientific approach in a manner in which we are quarantining health workers who have a risk of exposure. So, and this is done on the basis of expertise from our infection prevention and control teams, from the case management teams, and so forth. And a lot of effort has gone into this. A lot of research has gone into this. We are learning best practice from other parts of the world, and because we need necessarily to respond in a manner that fits our own circumstances. Now, with respect to the circular that originated from the Office of the Commerce Regional Directorate, I'm saying it cannot be correct. I read the circular. It says all health workers who are assigned, for example, to Robert Mugabe Avenue Clinic, they should vacate the quarantine facilities where they are in a space of about 2 days. The operative word here is all. If we are saying the strategy is to risk categorize and risk classify or stratify, then if you are saying all, there is no categorization, is there? There's no risk categorization. So for that reason, there is an error in that particular sector. And I have engaged the regional director. We are going to have a look at the way this was communicated. And of course, we have to be reasonable in terms of how we treat the health workers who may be asked to leave the quarantine facilities because of the risk of exposure to which they are exposed. So, as it now stands, that circular is void at the moment. It shouldn't be implemented. And I'm saying it should not be implemented because the principle of reasonability must apply. It cannot be expected that our health workers who are in quarantine facilities will be given only 1 day or 2 days to move. We will give you enough time so that you can make arrangements, and this is those that are going to be asked to depart, again, depending on the level of exposure. And each and every health worker who's going to be affected by this decision will be communicated to individually. It is not going to be by way of a circular that is basically brushing everybody with the same brush. That is not correct. You are going to be communicated with individually, and also what we are doing here in Commerce, it should be applicable countrywide. In terms of saying all health workers are going to be treated uniformly. And the health workers, I beg for your understanding to say that this is not to say we don't care about you. Those that are going to be asked to leave the quarantine facilities. We are saying, assessing your individual circumstance, assessing your possible risk of exposure, we are saying this category of health worker may not necessarily require to be quarantined, right? And you will understand that because the level of exposure, depending on the context of your work, differs. Not so. You'll agree with me that not everybody at a particular health facility is exposed to the same extent, right? Yes. Not everybody. So, and we must be mindful of the fact that we are dealing with public resources. We are dealing with situations where these resources can be spent better elsewhere to sharpen our response than, for example, paying for quarantine facilities for people who are not at high risk of exposure, right? So I want to say, for now, that circular is going to be withdrawn. We are going back to the drawing board because we are actually revising again the circular 53 that I referred to because of the evolving nature of the pandemic. So for now, I want to appeal to the staff members here, to the health workers at the Robert Mugabe Avenue Clinic, to continue working as they were doing, and in the coming week, we are going to communicate to you individually in terms of how this decision affects you, again, based on the level of risk of exposure. That is the operative mechanism here. We are not saying everybody must leave. We are saying that depending on your level of exposure, we will then see how the matter is going to be handled, who is going to be quarantined, and who is going to be allowed to work from home. But for now, you stay put until such time that you have done it. So I think I've made myself.
Just a follow-up question, respectfully, sir. When I spoke to the team here, by show of hands, the concern was that this is where the critical patients are coming. And the concern was that at some point with that patient, it passes through each of them, a patient that comes here. So they could not understand. I'm trying to understand someone working at this facility which is specifically tailored for testing. Does it also have low-risk health workers? Is that what the experts found when they did the research? And yeah, maybe you can answer that.
That's what I'm saying. The document on the risk categorization and risk stratification is not meant for Robert Mugabe Avenue Clinic. It's meant for the country as a whole. It's supposed to apply not only to the public sector, but also to the private sector. How do we risk categorize and risk stratify? And in the opinion and knowledge and expertise of those that know, we will be able to risk stratify and risk categorize each and every individual. So if it so happens that a certain category of workers is classified as high risk, then of course they will be quarantined so that we protect them, we protect their families, and we protect the public at large. So it's not a question of Robert Mugabe Avenue Clinic. It's a question of health facilities in the country generally. And COVID-19 is not the only infectious disease that we are dealing with. We deal with other infectious diseases, and the risk categorization will cover those areas as well. So each and every individual is going to be risk assessed, risk categorized, and risk stratified, and it's on that basis that a decision will be taken whether this person necessarily needs to be quarantined or they can operate from home.
Among other claims, there were claims or allegations about staff members that have been employed for over 3 months without a salary. There's only, for this specific clinic, there's only one vehicle available to transport the staff on rotation. Are you aware of this, and what is your response to this?
Thank you very much. As part of the COVID-19 response, the Ministry of Health approached the Office of the Prime Minister, and we created a temporary structure of 2,905 staff members. This was done to strengthen the response. So if it is such that there is a staff member who hasn't been paid, possibly because capturing the data of these individuals on the system in order to be able to, for salaries to be processed, that there is a delay in that regard, that has not been brought to my attention. But if it is such that there is such a thing, we are definitely going to address it, and so that we can process the salaries on time. We don't want to have health workers who are putting their lives at risk every day, and we are not attending to the basic need, such as the payment of the salary. So if there is such thing, it's going to receive our immediate attention. With respect to the question of vehicles, again, the response to the COVID-19 pandemic has exerted a lot of pressure on the ministry's operations, because we needed more and more vehicles to be able to transport staff members that are, are involved in the various activities, whether it is surveillance, whether it is other activities. Now, for that reason, we initially had contacted other offices, ministries and agencies to see whether they have excess vehicles that they can avail to the ministry for us to be able to allocate these vehicles to the various teams dealing with the pandemic. Again, not only in Windhoek, but also in other parts of the country. And that response, let me just finish, that response did not yield the results that we wanted. So we looked internally inside at our own assets that we have. We identified a number of 424 vehicles that needed minor repairs. And so far, we have repaired more than 200 and about 60 vehicles the last time I checked. So we are addressing this matter. If there is a need here at Robert Mugabe Avenue Clinic where transport is insufficient, that again is an issue that needs to be looked into. It has not specifically reached my desk, but as I'm saying, we have fixed already among the vehicles that were on our own asset list. About 260 of them, we have fixed them, and we can surely find a way of allocating a vehicle to this facility. One, because this is one of the busiest points, and we need to make sure that they are properly resourced.
Just my final question, sir. The risk, it's lingering in my head now.
Yeah.
Are you able to state at this point, if you look at the, I'm not in the medical field, but I'm just trying to establish where in the medical field a low-risk employee falls? Is it perhaps the cleaner? Is it the nurse? Is it the doctor?
That's what I'm saying. That is. You see, if a cleaner, for example, works in an ICU facility or cleans a room where a positive patients are kept, sure, you cannot say this cleaner is low risk. So it will depend on the area in which you operate. And that is why experts who know best how these things are classified are working on that. And that's why we are saying the classification of risk is going to be individual. It is going to be individualized so that each and every person is assessed on their working environment, which will then determine whether it is low, medium, or high risk. So it doesn't mean it's a category of workers. It means individual workers depending on the circumstances in which they operate. And that is how the risk is going to be assessed and categorized.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, let us know how many health workers are in isolation or quarantine countrywide?
What I can tell you, the data that I have is that we currently have more than 300 health workers who are infected with COVID-19. About 90% of them have recovered. However, to say how many are quarantined at this point, I don't have that information in my fingertips. Yeah. But it's data that is available.
Yeah, maybe just to rephrase the question, how many accommodation facilities for health workers is the ministry paying?
We have several accommodation facilities where health workers are being kept. Again, it's an operational matter. I don't have that information on my fingertips, but it's available within our records.
Thank you. Yes. Maybe the team has a question.
Yes, colleagues. I think all I can say is that the circular that was issued by Commerce Regional Directorate Office yesterday should be disregarded at this time. We are reviewing the document for risk categorization and risk stratification. And as I said, we are going to be communicated to individually because we are going to be assessed individually on the level of risk that you may be exposed to, and that is what is going to determine whether you continue to be in quarantine or you'll be working from home. But it is not to say that we are leaving you alone. No, it's not. It's just to say, looking at the resource envelope that we have, looking at the scientific stratification and categorization of risk, that is the route we need to take. I hope you understand that, and I want you to go back to work, do your job as you've been doing it in a great manner, and we surely appreciate the kind of work that you are doing here, and I look forward to a positive response from your side in terms of agreeing to go back to work so that we can serve the country.
Will the facilities be informed though, sir? So that they can just be where they are staying?
The facilities were not informed to release.
But they have SMSs from the facilities that is asking them to pick and leave.
No. Okay, in that,
started fumigating.
How do they fumigate if your items are in the rooms?
They were.
No. Yes.
I wanted to ask the same question as to whether the quarantine facilities that have, not quarantine, but our accommodation facilities that have communicated to our colleagues that they have to leave, whether they will be informed that this circular is now nullified.
Yeah, as I'm saying, there was no circular directed to the quarantine facilities as far as I'm concerned.
But they are
they are aware, but that's what I'm saying. In any case, you were to leave only from tomorrow. So if it is necessary that we communicate to the health facility, to the quarantine, to the accommodation facilities, that is an easy thing to do. But for now, you stay put. This is my partner.
Just a second question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
There is an issue. Our contracts are ending September the 22nd. And we've been seeing again some pictures on social media saying that our contracts will be extended till March next year, but there's been no communication to us to confirm whether this is true or not, and so we are wondering what's happening.
You received the letter of appointment, right?
I have received the letter of appointment.
whether your contract is going to be allowed to lapse or it is going to be extended, it's going to be done through the official channels. We don't plan through a microphone. We do not plan through a microphone. So we are aware of where we are in terms of the response. We are aware of the need that is there with respect to the staff complement that we need. So the staff members that have been recruited on a temporary basis will be informed about whether your contracts are going to continue or are going to be allowed to lapse. But that we will not do through social media. We will do it to you as we send you. We gave you your letter of appointment.
Mr. Nangunga, are the staff getting rest allowance?
There is no concept of risk allowance, really. We are talking about a question of honorarium. And as we said, there is engagement with various stakeholders. It's not only a question of the Ministry of Health and Social Services. We are talking about other stakeholders, because the question of whether it's in the what we call it risk allowance or honorarium speaks to a change in the condition of service of an individual. And if you are talking about a change in the conditions of service, you need to involve other stakeholders. And that is the consultation that is ongoing. So I don't want to preempt that consideration involving other stakeholders. So therefore, all I can say is that the consultations are going on. We know that, yes, health workers are giving their all, but again, we must follow the procedures. It's not a decision that can single-handedly be taken by any particular institution.
Just a follow-up question, if you don't mind. So when should we expect communication concerning the end or extension of our contracts?
We will give you the communication in good time.
We are already in the month of September, that's why.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We'll give you communication in good time. And as I said, we are talking about an ongoing response to the pandemic. I hope you get my drift.
So guys, just for me, are you guys starting to work now?
You are going to get to work, right?
Just by show of hands, how many doctors here? That's the actual testing. I just want to count quickly.
That do the testing.
Yeah, the actual.
All of us.
Doctors,
All of us.
We
yes.
all do the testing.
No, but
We rotate.
You mean
you rotate.
Yes.
This is the group comprising of doctors now.
doctors,
Yes,
nurses,
doctors,
drivers, everybody.
Okay, yes, I need to go and attend to other matters. There was a hand here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, since it was said the risk here is minimal, we are not always...
No, nobody said the risk here is minimal.
Okay, let me now put
No,
it in
nobody
this.
said that.
Since we are working with our low-risk PPEs in this area, we only put the PPEs when we are going in isolation. Here we stay with our low-risk PPEs. But anytime you receive a patient that is critical, that you have to rush on oxygen, how safe is that you must be with those low-risk? If you have to rush to this patient with immediate effect. No,
in any area where high risk of exposure is suspected, health workers must be protected appropriately. Health workers must be. Anybody that is dealing with a high risk of exposure must necessarily be protected correctly with the appropriate PPE. On the basis, of course, of what is called rational use of PPEs. So that is a decision that needs to be taken operationally by the head of this institution to say, this category of health worker needs this type of PPE. This category of health worker needs this type of PPE. And it's necessary you make your orders so that those things are provided at this facility. We don't want to have a situation where any health worker would find themselves in a situation where they get exposed or get a high risk of exposure without appropriate PPE. No, that is not what we want. So health workers must be protected appropriately, and that is the essence of this risk categorization and risk stratification document that was issued some time back.
We appreciate that you have come.
Thank you very much,
answer our
colleagues.
concerns.
I wish you a good day. Let us do this work. We know it's not easy. We know that if you listen to the minister's statement yesterday, the president's statement yesterday, we are saying that our health workers put their lives on the risk, at risk, to protect ours. That is highly appreciated. We acknowledge the sacrifices that you are making. That is why we want to make sure that you are treated correctly at all times. Okay? All right. Thank you very much, colleague. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is to do.
Mala. So, the director going to say something.
Robert.
Ah, record is good.